Hey, Lady C.
What's up?
You mind if I call you Houston?
Yeah.
I can't. Can I call you Houston just for tonight?
Sure, fine.
All right. So we're in Cape Canaveral, and we're about to launch the intro. So, Houston, are we clear for takeoff?
Uh-oh, I feel a song coming on. Ground control to Major Tom.
But this is serious. Are we clear for takeoff?
We are clear.
Can we get a countdown?
Oh, I couldn't do the David Bowie song. 3,
Copyright.
2, 1.
Got off in town, resident on 70 Road. Got a nice wife and kids, y'all right inside the grove. You know I like Mr. Clark. Yeah, I should know he is my friend. Say if I just stay out the grave, he'll see that I don't go to the pen. Mr. Clark is a lawyer, he could lie stream. He the first man to prove dead, water run upstream.
What's up, everybody? We are live here in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Man, I'm just happy to be alive, Lady C. What about
Oh my
you?
gosh, yeah, tornadoes and the weather and being attacked by crazy little bugs and
not having internet. I mean,
internet was crazy.
That's life-threatening.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
It
We're
really,
like nomads, but it's been a crazy roller coaster.
it really has. So we finally got to this Airbnb or VRBO in Cape Canaveral today, and we walked in the door and we're like, oh my God, it's got amazing internet. So we have been pounding the computers trying to get all of this content that we've been collecting over the last week of this really cool trip we've been on so far.
Yeah.
Getting it uploaded. But man, she's not kidding. Tornadoes.
I was scared. My hands were shaking. I said a prayer. It was really scary today.
Yeah, I was trying to hold her hand, but she was shaking so badly that I had to let go of her hand so it wouldn't mess up my driving, but you couldn't see 5 feet in front of the road.
It was no joke at all.
It was rough. But as we always do, the show has two fantastic sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
The first is GI Jigs. We love these guys, or the main guy, right, is LJ. These jigs are amazing. I freak out about their paint job all the time, but they work so well with so many soft plastics. It also is the prize for the evening, which we'll get to in just a second. Mm-hmm. Our other sponsor is Hook Optics. Mm-hmm. Lady C and I have gotten a chance to put them to good use. Yeah. Out there on the road, mm-hmm. and man, they're something else, aren't they?
For sure. They must have some insect repellent on it too, because it's the only place on my body I did not get eaten was behind the Hook optic glasses I was wearing.
Oh, they ate both of us, but they respond like you got the worst reaction.
I got welts. Oh, terrible.
Yeah, I kept on saying, I was like, you're gonna get no-see-ums down here in the South.
Yes.
And yeah, they sure enough came.
Yes. But enough about us.
Yeah, what do we got going on?
Oh my gosh. Wow. So we are so excited. I'm super excited to welcome Captain Dana. I'm going to mess up your name. Please forgive me. Tabarrini.
You nailed it.
I did. Cool. He's with Reel to Reel Charter and Guide Services. He also has his own podcast, which I've listened to a couple of times. Pretty amazing. What else does he do? Oh, he's out of North Carolina, where we were. Mm-hmm. In Oriental, born and raised, I think, too, yeah.
Born and raised, as many of you guys know, we've been doing this show for a few years now, and we're kind of expanding the region of it. Mm-hmm. So, Dana is a expert of the Neuse River basin, Pamlico area.
Yep. He's also a military veteran, mm-hmm. right on, and musician. Yeah. We'll let him share his musical aspirations when he comes on. But I'm super excited for our upcoming show with Steve Vogel with Backyard Custom Rods, and that's on the 24th. And on April 28th, we're going to take a little break.
Yeah, we got to get some fishing in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot going on here. Captain Walleye Pete.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. With 4-season guide service and light tackle charters.
Yeah.
We're excited. We might see him while we're down here in Florida, hopefully. That'd be great.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
If we fish with him while we're down here in Florida, that would mean that we fish with him twice here and twice on the Chesapeake. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. But should we bring in
yes, Captain
Captain
Dana
Tabarrini? What's up, brother?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
A lot better now that the weather's warmed up a little bit.
Yeah.
We had that really cold snap when you guys were here, and it kind of threw everything for a loop. But we're definitely getting into a spring, kind of a more predictable pattern now. So that's a good thing.
Did you guys get any of those thunderstorms up there today?
We got mostly rain, not a lot of thunderstorms, which we needed the rain to wash some of the pollen away. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Eastern North Carolina pollen, but it is unbelievable here. So thank God for the rain. We needed it to wash away some of that pollen. So
yeah, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and it's similar in that, like, in the spring, everyone's car turns yellow. Like, you think everyone had a yellow car because they're covered in a thick layer of pollen.
Oh yeah.
But your job for the evening, Captain Dana, is to choose the question of the night. We already have some people commenting. What's up, Cambo? What's up, Migs Fishing? And what's up, Rashawn? Good to see you all. But your job for the night is to choose the question of the night, which will be the reward for which will be these 3 packages of GI jigs. We got the 1-ounce rain minnow, which is awesome for all sorts of fishing. Dana, next time we see you, we're going to give you some of these jigs. These things are the bomb. And then we have some of these pink and white jigs that are really great for redfish if you pair it with like why am I blowing this? The diesel minnow. Come on, help me out.
Z-Man diesel minnow.
Thank you. Good grief.
Pearl blue glimmer. You can't go wrong.
That's my favorite color.
Thank you.
Pearl blue glimmer with this pink jig head.
Yes,
that would just be absolutely deadly on some reds, on some bull reds. Mm-hmm. And then we have these chartreuse. I think these are 1/2 ounce as well. Gotcha. So nice little package. I don't know, probably $30 worth of jig heads. Yep. They're not cheap. They're just real nice.
Gotcha.
Very effective.
Yeah.
Effective. Oh, you got a fan on here, Captain Dana. Michael G, and I'm going to totally mess up your name. He said, this dude's podcast is on fire.
Oh, nice.
Right on.
Fire.
I wonder if it's Mike Twitchell, but probably not.
It's he runs Migs Fishing. And Michael, I hope I'm not messing up the pronunciation.
I'm gonna mess up the name,
but it's MIGES Fishing.
Nice. Tell him, give him my contact info. Tell him let's hook up and go catch some fish.
Definitely.
Hey, I was going to tell you guys. So I know that you have the jig head package if you want. I know we were talking before the show about what kind of prize to give away. Whoever we decide tonight, I will do a half-price charter of their choice whenever they want to go. So we'll do a half-price charter.
Boom.
Whoever wins. There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Guys, and we've been fishing with Captain Dana, and guys, that's a real treat. And here's something. I know a lot of our audience, and we have, looks like a little over 20 people logged in right now. A lot of our audience is up there in the Chesapeake area. Mm-hmm. Lady C and I make this trip all the time. The Neuse River basin, it's like 5 hours away.
Right.
From if you left from DC or from Maryland or any of these things. So, we're not talking, a long way away. It's a weekend trip. You book a trip with Captain Dana, he'll put you on. Well, we're about to get to all that, right?
Yes, we're going to talk about all this.
We're about to get to all that stuff that involves all the amazing fish that you catch.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Sorry,
for
having
it.
some technical difficulties. Okay. All right. So, Captain Dana, born and raised in New Bern, North Carolina.
Yep.
Are we saying it right?
I don't have an accent.
Yep. So New Bern, the name came from the original settlers, which were from Bern, Switzerland. So Bern, Bern, Switzerland, and that's why you see the bears all downtown. It's very much, and it was settled late 1600s, early 1700s. It was founded, and then it just luckily I was born here and was able to be in what I consider still a small town. It's not very big. The county itself has 103 to 105,000 people, somewhere around there. So it's not a lot. It's a big county. But it was called New Bern. We are in the portion of the Neuse River basin where it just starts to open up and start to get wider. The actual Neuse River goes all the way up into Raleigh and beyond. So it's a very long river, but very narrow. Until it gets here where it opens up extremely wide. And I know where we went fishing was not on this side. We were on the Pamlico County side, but
Right.
A lot of us that run trips here, we're all over the Neuse River Basin. We're basically all over the place out here. But New Bern is where we all hang our hats, my group of guys in my network. And it's such a large and challenging estuary that you cannot survive it without friends. Especially if you're putting people on fish. It's one thing to go and look for fish yourself. It's another thing to have a group of 3 people, 2 of which who do not know how to cast. One's 9 years old and can't stop reeling. There's always some challenge to it. And then, of course, I always believe that, they need to have good gear to fish with. So when they break something, it's not cheap. So, but yeah, it's been a challenge in this area to run trips, but I really enjoy it. And I've done less fishing and more of just chartering, more just putting people on fish, and I've actually enjoyed that more. But yeah, New Bern is unique, man. It's different. It's a lot different, and every place has their challenges. You guys know I went to Texas and fished recently, and it has its own challenges. You look at it on a map and you go, oh, it's easy. We'll fish here and here, and then you get out there and you're like, I have no idea where to go.
Yeah.
Man, it's a lot of water.
True,
Yeah.
And you look at the map of the Noose, and you're like, well, there's Dawson's Creek, guys, for real. It's Dawson's Creek. And it's actually what the show's named after, if I'm not mistaken, right?
And well, ironically enough, Dawson's Creek was filmed down in Wilmington. So they probably stole the name just so it wouldn't be local, but yeah,
there's Dawson, there's Pierce Creek, there's Broad Creek,
and that's just Oriental.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just Oriental. And you look at it and you're like, they all look the same.
Yeah, and they all fish differently.
Yeah,
which is really cool. So
yeah, I've fished that area now 3 times, and like one time I just got lucky. I just launched on a random creek that I picked and caught trout right away, and the other times have been really tough. So I agree completely with what you're saying, and more reason, guys, if you go down to the area to hire Captain Dana, because it's an awesome fishery, but not one that is easy to just sort of drop in and go and start catching right away.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Captain Dana does the weekly report with Noose Tackle.
So Neuse River Bait and Tackle is what is our home tackle shop. It's the people that we call our home. A lot of us run trips out of there, and of course it's owned by Heather Willis and eventually her son, which will be Colton. Originally it was Todd Willis, and Todd passed away in October of last year. Really hard thing to deal with. 34 years old, and he was the kind of person that was just all about people. So as much as he was about his shop, he would stop dead in his tracks. If you walked in the door and you were a stranger, he wanted you to know he cared about you. So not only as a customer, but as a person. and he reached out a lot in the community in Pamlico County, which that's a whole different story that you can go on for hours about. But he was really, really active in Pamlico County and in the surrounding area just with people alone. And anyway, we run trips out of there, and he would do the Friday morning fishing report. You never knew what time he was going to pop on. He would just randomly, Facebook Live would pop up, and he'd be like, hey, y'all, it's Todd down at the tackle shop. We're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about that today. When he got sick, the group of us, myself, Captain Kevin Dewar of 3D Charters, Captain Ashley King of Keep Casting Charters, and Ben Ricks of Ricks Brothers Charters. Obviously, those three guys, they helped me with my own podcast because I can't do it by myself. I'm not a king. I like to be part of a village of idiots myself, so I like to be with those guys. But we did not, when Todd was in the hospital, we wanted that to keep going. It just so happens that I don't have to be at work till 8:30 in the morning. So I go down there and I do it. I did it to kind of do it while Todd was in the hospital. And then once he passed, it's one of those legacy things that you don't want to go away. You want it to stay there, and you want people to be reminded of it. We started a online tournament last year that raised money. All the proceeds went to Heather and Colton and Todd. Oh. And then now we're actually going to do a 1-day 4-trout shootout every October. We're going to continue to do this throughout the years, but it'll be on Instagram. All you have to do is just type in Todd Willis Open, and you'll see Todd's face. And there'll be more on that on Instagram, but follow that if you guys want. And I'm probably also going to do another online portion so that people, because we had people from Virginia, Maryland, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas. We had all these supporters who probably, half of them didn't even send a picture of a fish. I don't think they really cared about that portion. They just wanted to reach out and help because they've all at some point been touched by Todd. So
that's awesome.
I could talk about that for hours. That'll be on our podcast. So if you get a chance, Real to Real Fishing Podcast, you can hear about it there. But yeah, that's why I do the fishing report. I enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy talking to people about fishing, but had it not been for the relationship with Todd and with Heather and Colton, I probably wouldn't do it. Because I have to get up earlier and I have to go do it, and you have to stay on top of fish. You have to know where they are, and people can tell when you're full of crap. If you're up there just jibber jabbering and not really saying anything, they can tell. They know. But the good thing is, a lot of the people who tune in love Todd. They love the shop. They support the shop, and now they expect it. To the point where if I don't do it, I'm getting text messages like, where's the fishing report? I'm like, I'm in Texas. I can't do it. Like, I'm sorry. So, but yeah.
I really loved, we listened to some of the podcasts recently. And, for those of you guys watching that haven't seen it, you get a lot of guys on a lot of podcasts that'll, they're not going to give you the keys to the castle. Dana, the ones that we saw, you're talking about specific lures, specific colors, and really, really giving a lot of information. I have one small anecdote to talk about with Todd Willis, and just that he got to see his dream in terms of Neuse River bait and tackle come to fruition, because I went down to the Neuse River basin and went to Neuse River bait and tackle probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it was the whole store was the size of a 1-bedroom apartment. And then Lady C and I got to go down there recently, and I just entered Neuse River bait and tackle into my GPS, and we pulled up, and I'm like, this ain't it. But we saw the sign on the thing. You walk in there, it's like Dick's Sporting Goods.
It's pretty big.
It is huge, and it's got a restaurant attached to it, owned by the same people. It is a top-notch facility.
It is.
And it's, I would imagine it makes the folks in that area very proud.
Yeah, especially the young men. So I was watching one of your fishing reports this morning, and just from the experience of us going into this tackle shop, all the young men knew who you were and spoke very highly of you. So when I watched you lead this young man on your fishing report, the one that we watched this morning, you're just not doing a report and giving us really great information, but you're shaping the youth in that area, which it's a really tough neighborhood in the sense of it's country. There's a lot of farmland, and they don't have access to a lot of things that we do. So when you have someone like you come in and help shape the youth and give them something to look forward to and get excited about, and I'm sure a lot of them have been fishing since they were little too. But I can see the enthusiasm just from your interaction with that young fella in the report this week. So it was pretty good.
Oh, he had his independence too.
He did.
Captain Dana was saying, "All I want is clear water," and this kid was like, "Not me, man.
Muddy.
Dirtier the better."
Yeah. You know what's funny is that's what Todd was all about. So if I can do 10% of what he did on a daily basis, then I'm doing pretty good. That's how much of an impact Todd had on my life, much less most of the people. And I didn't know him as long as some of the other people. He brought me on as pro staff there about 3.5 years ago. And then when I decided to become a captain, he was like, "If you're going to do it, go all out. Don't hold back." And
that's really good.
Don't let anybody talk you out of it. So
for sure. So we have a question.
Yeah, we got a question coming in.
It's actually my question to you. Rashawn thought of it too.
He's taking it. Oh, you already pulled it up. You want to read it?
Okay. How is the fishery on the Neuse River? I haven't fished it since I was stationed in Camp Lejeune. Yeah, that's Rashawn.
Rashawn, that's a good question. So the fishing's pretty good. It has its moments. One of the things that I'm a firm believer in is that you have, with all the species, you have two different branches of these fish. And this is not something that, is from biology or anything like that. This is just what I believe. I believe there are resident fish, and I believe there are migratory fish. Your migratory fish come and go at certain times of the season, but you can catch a trout in and around the creeks and the mouths of the Neuse River all year long.
Yep.
I was telling somebody the other day when I bought the Carolina skiff a few years ago, it was in June. And I took the boat out in June to a point that I was just fishing the other day, which is now spring. And it was late in the afternoon. I was by myself. It was just one of those, woosah moments. Let me get out there and fish and just have some peace. And I put on a Spook Junior black and chartreuse just for that big, I like to have that color break in there. And I sat on a point in 5 foot of water that was a foot deep. I would throw over the point, pull it back, and I sat there and in about 30 minutes caught 6 trout over 18 inches on top water. And this is June. This is not, April. This isn't October. This is June. Fast forward a year later, just around the corner outside of Dawson's Creek, I'm working a place called Pearson Point, and I've got a kid on there, and he cannot stop reeling. He's literally reeling like this the whole time. I was like, all right, I got something for you. And I put on a 1/4 ounce jig head with a 5-inch diesel minnow. And I said, you cannot reel that fast enough. And he's just looking at me like, oh, yes, I can. And he'd cast it. He'd reel and started smoking trout. And this is in July. I mean, then come August and September, you're getting into what's going to be your pre-movement or your movement of migratory fish. So year round, you can catch trout. You can catch the drum are better spring through fall. But as far as the fishing, it's not horrible. We got a long way to go. I will say that. I think there's some regulatory things that need to happen differently. I think there's some things that both sides of your coin, commercial and recreational, can do to make our fishery better. It won't change until we stop arguing about who gets what. That's the big key. If you argue allocation and not conservation, you're not doing what's best for the fish. You're doing what's best for you and for your wallet or for your cooler. When what you should be doing is thinking about, okay, this is my second time out today. Do I really need 4 more trout because I caught 4 this morning? And they do it. There's some captains that they abide by their limits, and there's some that don't. If you've got 3 people on the boat plus me, that's 16 trout. Then you go out in the afternoon, you got 2 people. It should be 8 trout, not 12. You caught your limit this morning. But that's neither here nor there. But the fishing on the Neuse River, is good. Like I said, it's a unique place. You can target many, many different species of fish. You will have either a drum trout, flounder, or striped bass. You can target all 4 almost year round. There's a little small season between, say, late November and March where your drum aren't as prevalent, but we're catching, I caught flounder in the back of a creek, 20 foot deep in 39-degree water, and it was a 19-inch flounder, jigging trout. So,
Dana, Captain, I think you and I have talked about this before, but there actually are a lot of similarities between how the Chesapeake is managed and how your area is managed. They're both good fisheries. Potentially could be amazing. They should be world class.
Well, I think what you guys noticed is once the hot ditch closed and there wasn't this artificial insemination of a different environment, because what the hot ditch did was it actually kept the water a little bit warmer, and you guys had a disgustingly good. I remember fishing there in 95 and 96, and catching a 29-inch trout was like catching a 15-inch trout. You just went to the hot ditch and you start jigging up, and there they are. And now, you struggle to catch a trout of that size anywhere. And, it's all in how we treat it. So if we do a better job of conservation, if we do a better job of policing our estuaries and policing ourselves as anglers and as commercial guys, then your fishery can survive and actually thrive.
Oh yeah. Well, I have a kind of a pointed question later on that topic.
But we got a lot of questions coming in from the audience, which is a good thing, guys.
Yeah.
Best shows are always driven by you guys' questions. Scott Kammer, good buddy. What's up, Scott? He said he's fished all over North Carolina. I've never found my way to the Neuse River. What are some differences in fishery versus Pamlico or Albemarle? I know each share a lot of species that are same, but as ways of fishing and tactics, your bait runs that may be different to area or just general ecology difference in river. Man, Scott Kem is going for both the best question and the longest question.
That's
I know,
true.
right? So the best way to answer that is
great question, Scott.
Again, you're going to have years where the Albemarle, and I've asked this question. I used to live up in Elizabeth City, and I know that there are times when the trout push really far back up, even close to Elizabeth City, and there's times when they don't. This past year, I didn't know if the really good trout push was going to show up again because it was almost December before we really saw it well here in and around New Bern. So I think it has a lot to do with your weather patterns, with your bait movement. All of that's triggered by weather, every bit of it. The bait's going to move in or out based on the wind. And that's one thing about our sound. The Albemarle and Pamlico sound, they're conjoined, but they're technically different, but they're really the same. It's the same body of water. They're not driven by tide. It's driven by wind. The wind is what creates the tide there. You have some tidal movement over and around, Oregon Inlet, Ocracoke Inlet, places like that. But you don't get these 4 and 5 and 6 foot swings like you see in places like Rudy Inlet and Lynn Haven and whatnot. You really just have to follow where the wind's going. So with that said, if you have a late fall where your nor'easters don't come in and don't push water up into these sounds, or you don't get that real easterly flow of pushing the water from the sound back into the rivers and into those small finger creeks, the bait doesn't move in as easily. The fish are going to be around bait. I mean, you no matter where you go, if you go out into the middle of the ocean, if you find bait, I guarantee you there's fish somewhere around it, somewhere, tracking them down and going to feed when it's time. So as far as tactics, to me, the tactics are always going to be the same. In the spring and summer, I'm going to throw a lot of hard baits, and I'm going to throw some paddle tails because I want a lot more action in front of that fish. In late summer to early fall, I'm going to start using a lot more popping corks, especially in midsummer to late summer, to try and get their attention. These fish are skinny and they're having to eat a lot because their metabolism's up really, really high. Once you get to your late fall and early like winter, these fish are now packing on the pounds to survive through the winter, because at that point they're going to eat when it's an opportunity versus chasing down bait. So my tactics are always going to be based on what water column they're going to be in. So spring, summer, they're in that upper column, that upper 1 to 4 feet, or pretty much on flats. Fall, winter, they're in that middle column, and then winter, obviously deep. But they will move up on flats when it warms up. So if you have a day in January where all of a sudden it's 62 degrees for some reason, and your water temp pops up somewhere around 50 to 51, those fish will move up on a grass flat in 2 to 3 foot of water, and you can target them relatively easy. Doesn't mean that fishing is easy. It just means that's where they are. So as far as bait runs that may be different to the area, we get a lot of menhaden and mullet. That's going to be our 2 major baits. Guys up north call them bunker, your small peanut pogies, even up to the large ones. But mullet, finger mullet are all over the place. The little short Instagram video I did the other day, I literally got off work at 2:00. I went and picked a creek that I knew were holding fish. Had no clue where they were in there. I pulled up to the bank and I watched mullet jumping along the bank edge, and I went, well, there's bait here. There's going to be fish here. 3 casts, 3 fish, 45 minutes. I had a 1-man limit. I quit and went home. So it's not about finding. It's not about being lucky. There's a strategy to it. Being lucky is a 30-inch trout. That's being lucky, but you also have to be where they are. So there's some ecology difference in it. You're going to get a lot of, like the Noose, it goes a long way, whereas the rivers off of the Albemarle aren't quite as far. They don't go quite as far, but some of like the Tar River, Pamlico River, those do go a little bit further. So Scott, great question, man. It's a whole lot of info to come out of one question.
It's a lot of info. I'll make one more shameless plug for this region, and obviously for Captain Dana and Reel to Reel charters. But where we are, during the winter, what do people catch in our area? Blue catfish and pickerel.
Striped bass,
big striped bass. That's true.
Yeah.
But if you're really into specs, they're there. I mean, they're 5 hours away if you want a different adventure. And I've caught them there in January and February. I mean, you're fishing really slow down on the Neuse River, but they're there and they're eating.
We talked about this not too long ago. A group of us were talking about slow fishing, right? And to me, slow fishing is more about waiting till it gets in the right water column. If it's 18 foot of water, like back in the creek where I took you guys, and we got some holes back there that are 12, 15, 18 feet, the first thing someone does is, well, I need to put on a 1/4 ounce jig head or a 3/8 ounce jig head so I can get to the bottom. When really, the better option is to take like an 1/8 ounce and just let it fall slower. Because these fish the longer you can keep something in their face, the better opportunity you have of them reacting to it and biting it. Again, it's wintertime. They're overwintering. They're slow. It doesn't mean that they're lethargic. I don't believe that they're lethargic. I believe they're cold. And what happens is that bait stays in their face and they hit it and they, oh God. And the the amount of head shakes aren't quite as much as the summertime. That's why we say they're slower. No, it's just colder water, so their muscles are contracted tighter. They're not gonna react like they are in the summertime. Just like if you get up and try to go run in 20-degree weather versus 60-degree weather, you're probably gonna run a little bit slower because it's cold. So, but slow is being more patient, not necessarily fishing really, really, really tiny. Because when I pop a jig off bottom, I'm popping that thing up 2 or 3 feet. And it's hard snaps. It's not like I'm just gently raising it. I'm popping it up hard so that it falls back down nice and easy and slow. And then when it hits bottom again, I pop it up again. So that to me is slow fishing.
Yeah. We have another question actually in the realm of technique. John Hostaka?
Fish Stalker. Fish Stalker. No.
Is that it?
That's his nickname. John
Fish
Fish Stalker, Hostalker.
Can you fish the noose without a popping cork?
So the answer is yes. Absolutely 1000% you can, because if anybody who has followed me fishing at all or on the podcast or listened to me talk, I loathe a popping cork. I like them for the old drum because you get to feel that drum take that bait. So that's okay.
Yes.
But as far as targeting, they're great for targeting drum, trout, flounder. They're absolutely phenomenal and they work great. But I would personally rather feel the thump of a 17 MR or a topwater explosion than I would a popping cork.
Yep.
If I'm on the boat by myself, I'm not throwing a popping.
She's dogging a popping cork.
Yes.
Lady C just caught a 30-inch red. Is that even a puppy drum anymore? At 30 inches?
That's almost a bull. That's depending on where you are. That's a keeper fish in Texas. $3. That's your fish. So
if we can ever get that video uploaded in these VRBO internet Wi-Fi, but yeah, she just caught a beast of we'll call it a bull puppy.
Yes.
On a popping cork. So she can dog it all she wants, but
Still, I agree with you, Captain Dana. I like to feel the pull, the drag, and with the popping cork, I was like, am I on? I didn't even know.
Got a question coming in from Michael from Mix Fishing. He says, by water temp, where do the reds go in the sound? I think he wants your honey holes.
Huh.
So that's okay. So typically, let's say let's say we're getting into October, right? October, your water temp's going to drop down into the high 60s. We're going to start seeing a little bit of a cooling trend. Your northeast winds are coming. It's going to cool the surface of the water off. These reds that have been here, as far as the large reds, who get here like early July. I know everybody thinks it's September and October. I'm telling you right now, you're missing out if you're not going to look for these fish in early July, mid-July. So late July and August. What happens is they come in, and me and Ben Ricks talk about this all the time. They come in, and we're on them, and then they leave. And they're like, where did they go? And like a week and a half later, here they are again. And then we're having a ball until October. So as far as water temp, they're here when it's extremely warm. I'm talking 80 to 85 degree water, sometimes 86, 87, 88. And they'll stick around until late October or mid to late October. You can catch them close to Oregon Inlet and Ocracoke Inlet out that way pretty much till about late November. And then they move out into the ocean. And we actually had a year this year where in November and December, they were catching them out by Cape Lookout. And I mean, schools of them. You see pictures of these guys holding up 45, 50-inch drum, and they're like, we thought we were catching grouper, and they're, look, we're all over these drums. And they were everywhere, around Shark Island and all that. So, again, weather is everything. Weather is absolutely everything. If you're going to fish, you need to learn how to be a part-time weatherman, without a doubt.
That's true, yeah.
We include all the questions. Questions from the audience take priority. So we include them all. You want to? So Michael's question is, my question isn't fishing related. I'm at bingo with my wife. Gosh. What's the best excuse to tell her so I don't have to go to bingo and can go fishing instead? Thanks. I really need a good one for next week.
Wow.
Well, so the best way to answer that is you have to combine the games, right? So before you ever get to bingo, just call out like N65 and she'll look at you funny. And then when she doesn't answer, say, go fish and then leave. So you combine the two games. That's how you do it. That's how you do it, man.
I like that question. It's funny.
Great.
Yeah.
I would always like to urge a good work fish home balance. Try to find that. I know there's no real balance. You're always really just tipping the scale back one way or the other. There's no real life balance. But if you tip the scale in your direction too much and not in her direction, you'll find out really quickly.
Right on. Amen. Good point, Captain Dana.
Or just find a Lady C who wants to go fishing more than you do.
One of the jokes that you always hear is happy wife, happy life. But the truth is, happy spouse, happy house. It's both ways. So
right on. You go preaching here.
Boom.
Yes.
Let's see.
Oh, we got a good one.
Got a bunch of them coming in. Which one do you want to read?
Oh boy, got so many I can't even keep up here. Let's see.
Robert's got a good one.
Oh, okay. Lombardi. Let's see here. Oops. All right. Got them coming in fast here. All right. So Robert Lombardi. Hi guys. I will be in the topsail area next month for the first time. Taking the Hobie. I was looking at a Hobie. Any insights would be appreciated. Thanks.
I'm going to say the Hobie is his kayak. So what I would recommend is to find you some really good hard points. The good thing about a point, and maybe a lot of people don't really quite understand, if you look at the topography of a point.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose or are we off or is he off? Uh-oh. Ooh.
Guys, comment below if...
Oh, there he is. He's back on.
I could hear you the whole time. It's weird.
Okay.
All right. So topography of a point. I think this is something that people miss. It's one of the most important things we look at when we're old drum fishing. And that's how the lines get tighter.
Hang on a second, Dana. Sorry to interrupt you. Can you clarify to the people that aren't from that region what an old drum is?
Yeah.
Old drum. So what we consider old drum are your mature drum over 40 inches. So North Carolina has a citation program that's 40.
I wonder if it's us. Are we off?
Yeah, I'm not sure who's freezing.
Oh, there he goes. Sorry.
Mine looks like it's pretty good.
Okay.
Okay.
You there?
It's us.
Yeah, we're here.
I can hear you. I can kind of see you. There you are. There you are.
Okay.
All right. So, is it still working?
It's him, not us. It's on Dana's end. Apparently, it's you're freezing, Dana.
Uh-oh.
Is it me?
Yeah.
It's all right.
It'll probably get better.
How about now? Might be.
Better. Yeah.
You got us?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. So old drum is just 40-inch drum and bigger. They're older. In other words, they're about 30 to 35 to 40 years old. And this topography thing isn't about old. I'm going to get to the topsail area. I want to get to that point. One of the things we look for when we're targeting those old drum is points. And they're not always just on land. They're underwater also. So you can have a big flat, and all of a sudden that flat runs to a point, and then it drops down into 5, 8, 10, 12 foot of water. Those points are where your bait fish stack trying to hide. And then the big drum will push them up on that flat, and then they'll just go to town on those. So if I was going to be in topsail, and I've never fished topsail, one time I fished from Sneed's Ferry up around the Topsail Island Bridge and then left. If I'm going to topsail, I'm going to fish, number one, I'm going to fish structure, which is pilings. I'm going to look around docks. I'm going to find oyster bars. I'm going to research it a little bit and just kind of look. And remember, those of us who are super duper passionate about fishing, we're not just going to drop the boat and try to take off and go look for fish. We're researching it long before we get there. So I would suggest a good app to have on your phone is Navionics. You can kind of go through and look at that area and see where these points are. Also, I'm going to talk to some locals at a tackle shop. Hey, what tides are best to fish here? They're going to give you information. If there's one thing I've learned about trout fishermen and drum fishermen, they want to tell you where they caught fish. It's on the edge of their lips and they're dying to tell you, oh my God, I limited out in 30 minutes. It was so awesome, you know. And I went here. What time? Well, it was yesterday. You know, whatever. They're going to tell you. Try to keep it simple. Whatever your confident bait is. So if you like to target drum and your confidence bait is a white paddle tail, you better be throwing a white paddle tail, because how you feel about that bait transitions all the way down the line, all the way down to the lure, and the fish can sense it. Yeah. If it's an awkward presentation, the fish is going to be like, no thanks, I don't want that. So if you're not good at throwing a mirror lure, don't throw a mirror lure because they told you they were catching them on mirror lures. You can go to the same spot and throw 20 different lures and catch fish. But what I will recommend is look at those points, find out if it's a falling or a rising tide, look for your bait. That's your 3 keys. If they tell you that they're catching them on falling tides, look at your tide chart. You don't want to get stuck somewhere, so don't creep into a flat where it empties out if you don't know the water that well, because you see boats and kayakers stuck all the time. The good thing is on a kayak, you can drag yourself to deeper water, so it's not quite as bad. But I will tell you that a lot of those mud flats in and around Topsail, that mud is super thick. When my wife was a kid, she's standing in here now, so I'm going to tell the story. When she was a kid, her brother and cousin were out in a marsh somewhere with her and left her standing there, and somebody had to come pull her out of the marsh, and the boots are still there somewhere. So, but yeah, you got to be careful walking around those marshes like that. But yeah, look for bait. I'm going to suggest a falling tide. Find out when your high tide is and let it fall. Find an area where the bait is up and inside of a certain spot, and that bait will start having to move out. As soon as that water turns and it starts going this way, those fish are going to be hammering that bait. So that's what I would suggest. And like I said, fish a confidence bait. If your confident bait is a popping cork, man, throw a popping cork. Popping cork and gulp, you cannot go wrong. It will work. So.
Got another question from John Fishtaka Hustaka. That's a tongue twister. He says, don't the big shrimp trawlers run the Noose?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And, you know, there's science on both sides. There's guys who say, obviously, if we were pulling our nets and it was dragging bottom and it was tearing nets, we wouldn't do this. But, I mean, I can remember when I was a kid going out there catching croaker in a dual console Dixie that my grandfather owned. And there were shrimp all over the place, and there were oyster bars out there, and it's just not there anymore. So you kind of have to look at it as a mathematical equation and go A plus B plus C equals D. And if A and B hasn't changed, but C has, then that's why you have the result you have now. So would I be upset if the shrimping only happened offshore? Not even in the slightest. But right now it's legal, so I'm not going to hold it against them. If it's legal for those trawlers to shrimp not in the Noose, but in the lower Noose, which is kind of in and around Oriental in that area. And there's all kinds of changes going on right now. There's lawsuits. There's a lot of stuff going on. But I think at some point we have to do something different. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about, you know, the fact that it's legal. I think we all have our own opinions in terms of, you know, what's sportsmanship, you know, what's best for the environment, what's best for the ecology. But what happens a lot of times is we get a lot of Facebook game wardens, right? Yeah. Where you can't post a fish without someone saying, well, did you put it back? You can't go shrimping in the river without somebody making a comment. So it's not really the people we need to attack. it's those people making regulations that, you know, need to.
Well, I think that's a big problem in life right now, and you see where social media has a double-edged sword. Obviously, it can be used as a really powerful tool to help people and to promote some really good things. For example, Release Over 20, David Fladd and that group with iStrike, you know, they're doing a really good thing. But at the same time, if a guy catches a 22-inch fish on my charter and he wants to keep it, I'm not going to tell him no. That's his fish, and he's well within his legal right to keep that, so that's fine. At the same time, if he asks why, then there's your opportunity to educate and say, hey, you know, this fish produces this many eggs, and fish of these size don't always exist, so blah, 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 and go on. But and I've been part of Release Over 20 since just about their inception. So, but at the same time, I have no problem throwing an 18-inch fish into the live well. Zero, none. If I've got people that like fish and that love to eat it, I recently got on a redfish kick where some pan-seared redfish and tacos is really, really good. So,
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. We had that issue with the state record holder this year.
I was just about to ask you to sort of clear the air on that one, because you gave us some information that I don't think a lot of people around had.
Yeah, he was on our podcast. Matter of fact, we centered one episode just all about him and that catch. And, you know, Todd Spangler, great job on that fish, man, by the way. It was the only bite and the only fish he caught. So he was destined to have that fish. I believe that was preordained at some point for him to catch that fish. And you wouldn't find a more humble angler. You will not find a more humble angler. That guy is just, he's not all about the pomp and circumstance. So,
Captain Dana, if you wouldn't mind backing up for just a second and explaining the fish that Scott caught and the significance of that.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So state record had been, I want to say 40, 60 years. I don't know. It's been a while. That state record was 12.25 pounds. And he caught
speckled trout, guys. Yeah.
He caught a 34-inch speckled trout, 34.5 inch with an 18.5-inch girth, and it weighed 12.5 pounds. The funny thing is, if you go listen to the podcast, he had no clue it was even a state record. Like, they were contemplating what to do with this fish, and the guy's like, I think we need to go weigh it. His buddy, and he's like, you know, he's like, they put it on the grip and they go, it's 12.5 pounds, you know. And at that point, he's doubting whether his scale is even accurate, you know. So, and of course, it looks like a dinosaur. Mm-hmm. So they take this giant cooler and they've got, you know, fresh or river water in it, and they've got aerators going, and they did the best they could to keep this fish alive. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the fish expired during the process. Well, the thing that bothered me was how many people gave their opinion of what they would do in that scenario. And the world seems to fall on the sword when it comes to the what if. What I would do is such and such, right? You don't know that. You've never had a 34.5-inch trout in your hands. So until you have that size of a fish in your hands and making that decision, don't shame someone that kept one to try and get the record to check and see. And, you know, it ended up, had he not went through that process, that record would still stand. I firmly believe there's more fish out there like that. I think a lot of these fish exist, and we're just not patient enough to fish for them. Like there's like some of the guys from Speckled Truth and how they talk about how they're targeting only large fish and they're looking for one bite. I was fishing Tuesday with a friend of mine, and I finally put a topwater on in the middle of the day, and I'm throwing along this bank because I'm seeing all the signs of what should be here. And we were in between a major and minor, which is where I like to be for a big trout. I don't want to be on a major and minor. I want to be in between. And I missed one that was a monster. So yeah, I mean,
perfect segue.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect segue, Dana.
That answered the next question. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, sort of. Do you want to ask it anyways?
Okay. So Michael asks, what's your best, the one that got away story?
It's not a speckled trout.
I didn't think it was.
It's a tournament-winning marlin.
Cool.
A couple years ago during Big Rock, it was kind of the the Hail Mary at Saturday, which is the last day of the tournament. You got to have lines in at 2 p.m. and at 1:27 p.m. our right long line got smashed. I had picked a bait to put out there and stick it out there, and it absolutely it felt like it was going to pull the outrigger off. It was one of the most epic fish I've ever seen. I'll conservatively say the fish was over 700. Talking to some other people, fish probably was over 800. But we lost the fish. So it spit the lure and it was gone. And, I thought losing what I'm pretty sure was a 28-inch plus trout next to the boat, I thought that was heartbreaking. That is nothing compared to being in a gigantic tournament like that and knowing all the fish that have been weighed in have all been sub 500 pounds. This is a tournament winner. All we have to do is execute and kill this fish, and we win. We win it all, and gone. So, and that's fishing.
If you don't mind, if you're comfortable, what dollar figure are we talking about that shook that hook?
1.2.
Okay, next question.
I have one.
1.2.
Go ahead.
We got a couple here.
That's what that would have won. So
Yeah. We actually hit a lot of the questions already
We
too.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even talked to invasive species.
I'm going to be the first to tell you that I'm not a marine biologist. I know a lot of captains and fishermen like to pretend that they know everything about fishing. I don't know everything. I like to be a learner. I like to always be learning. I couldn't tell you what an invasive species we have because at one point I thought bowfin were invasive and they're not.
They're not?
Don't know anywhere. No, we have bowfin back in the creek. So I'm sure there are invasive species here. But as far as my knowledge of what they are, I couldn't even tell you. I don't know if it's tiger shrimp or lionfish or I don't know. What I find invasive is the thing we were talking about earlier with nets being in the wrong place and doing this and doing that. Humans are the invasive species without a doubt.
It's a brilliant answer, yeah.
So to sort of connect the Neuse River and where a lot of our audience is, well, not Neuse, but that Carolina, Eastern Carolina coastal region. As you probably know, Dana, the striped bass is, probably the most targeted fish in the Chesapeake Bay. But the Cape Fear has actually established a striped bass fishery over the last, I'm not sure how long. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And
So I'm fortunate enough to be friends with a person who was heavily in the striped bass fishery and in the management of it. And my opinion on striped bass in the Neuse River is we either need to not collect them at all for a few years or let them collect them until they're gone, because that's the only way we're going to learn from it. You get a 1 to 2 day time period now where you can harvest them in the Roanoke and the Noose. They're shut down, period. There used to be a really good striped bass fishery here, and if you're harvesting too many of them, this is a bureaucratic answer to the question. North Carolina reacts; they don't act ahead of time. It's always reactionary. It's always, oh crap, we should have. And the bureaucratic process of Division of Marine Fisheries has just become to the point where if your problem is, let's say you go out there and you figure out, I know this is a hyperbole, but this is a perfect example. Let's say you and I are fishing and somehow we brilliantly come across the reason why striped bass aren't as good as they should be. Well, if the next management meeting isn't for 9 months, then it doesn't matter what kind of evidence you have. We'll talk about it in 9 months. That is not the way to operate a fishery. And that's why the fishery is on the brink of almost disaster, in my opinion. And it's an unpopular opinion both ways. It's an unpopular opinion with anglers because they want to keep fish. It's an unpopular opinion to the commercial guys because they want to keep fish. And the truth is, if the fish population is hurting, stop. Just stop. Nobody harvested. If they told me today, you can't keep another speckled trout for the next year because we figured this out and we need to stop harvesting, I would go, great. I'm letting everything go. I don't have an issue with that. And again, if the regulations say you can keep 4, then you can keep 4 either way. The problem is we need better regulation and we need better answers to the problem, and we need less bureaucracy and more action. So
yeah, I think most of our regular viewers would totally agree with you. There's great respect for the fish. I know you talk a lot about that in your podcast, having respect for the fish and then giving back to the ecosystem. I know just a couple of people who are on right now also feel that same way, and that there needs to be solutions to these problems, or else generations, your own children may not be able to experience a lot of what you're experiencing right now.
And that's the tragic part is, I mean, I can remember catching 2.5-pound croakers. I mean, big croakers that looked as big as puppy drum. I mean, these were huge croakers. And now I will say this, the older generation that kept cooler fulls of fish did not help either. So, I don't want to get back to the way it was. I wanted the fishery to be back where it was, not the way that we could. So,
yeah, we are just about out of time, but Michael asked a really good question.
Yeah. So who do you credit? And actually, this was one of my first questions. You didn't get to. So who do you credit for sparking your love for fishing? Can you remember the first fish you caught?
So, ironically enough, there's pictures of me fishing in Oriental, and I'll have to find them at some point. We're fishing over on this wall on the east side of Oriental, and I literally we got cane poles. I don't even know if we caught anything, but it was always a combination of my mom and my grandparents. They routinely would take me down to Dawson's Creek. I ended up falling in love with that place, and I fished Dawson's Creek and Broad Creek growing up. We were catching trout and drum there, like just on bottom rigs with frozen shrimp. I mean, that's how many fish were around. We grew up kind of poor, so I never lacked for anything. I didn't go days without food, so that's not what I mean. I don't want to mean it that way, but we definitely didn't have a lot. But I can remember my family making lots of room for fishing in my life, whether it be on the piers, whether it be out on a boat, with my grandfather, whether it would be from a bank. I just think my mom figured out really quickly that this is a good way to have him be around me, to let me be around her, and smiling all the time. Always happy when I'm fishing. Always happy. Didn't matter if it was a cane pole, a Zebco 33, spinning reel, didn't matter. Whatever it was, I enjoyed it. So yeah, I'd have to give it to my family. That's really what created the spark. The most memorable fish I ever caught from my childhood was at Dawson's Creek, and it wasn't even that big of a fish. It just happened to be 2 18-inch drum on one rig. So that's basically 36 inches of fish fighting, and I've got a little push button Zebco 33 with probably 12-pound monofilament back then, and it's stretching that line and it's running up and down the channel, and I'm running back and forth, and I finally get it in, and I'm holding these 2 fish up, which at 8, 9 years old, that fish was long past my elbow. I'm holding these fish up and I'm bragging, and my grandfather looked at me and said, all right, you got to put them back, because they weren't slot. They weren't big enough, or whatever the size was back then. And I'm grown enough to tell you, I cried. I was mad. I was upset because I could not keep those fish. But we released the fish, and it taught me a little bit about what we could keep and couldn't keep, and so that's to me that's the most memorable fish I caught. It was that pair of puppy drum. So
that's good stuff.
It is. Well, we didn't get to I had some questions about your podcast, but since we're out of time, how can people connect to your podcast?
So the easiest way is if you go, it's on Apple and Spotify, both. Reel to Reel Fishing. You literally just type in REEL, the number 2 and REEL, and it'll populate and pop right up. Also, you can go to Instagram or Facebook, and the links are there. And I'm really relatively easy to find. So,
Okay.
And if someone doesn't win the discount tonight and they want to book a trip with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is you can send me a message on Facebook or on Instagram, and my number's on there, so you can text me or call me and ask me about it. And we're working on a website. A lot of changes coming up in the next year or so. I know I talked to you guys a little bit about that, but I'm trying to keep it a little on the down low right now. But there'll be some big changes coming up. There'll be a website. You'll be able to log on there and pick dates, and should be exciting to watch this grow into what I think it can become. So
yeah.
Well, we're definitely excited. And whatever comes to you, couldn't come to a better guy. We really have enjoyed the time that we've gotten to spend with you, and are actually looking forward to spending some more time with you.
You ain't far away. April's coming. So
Coming up in April. We cannot wait for that. But speaking of waiting for things, we have
Prize giveaway.
Prize giveaway. This, and what is it? It's 6 free trips with you, right?
Yeah. I'll have to get permission for that one. But no, it'd be a half price trip, and I will recommend. I'll tell you the winner, and then I'll tell you what I recommend. So the winner is going to be Steven.
Steve.
The long question.
Scott Kemp.
Yes.
Let me just make sure.
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
Okay, Scott. Awesome.
Yay, Scott.
And the recommendation?
So my recommendation is, I don't know where he's from, but I would always want to fish sometime in late September, early October. That's a time when we can kind of transition. September's great for old drum, but you pick what you want to do, man. Just get in touch with me, and like I said, you can hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and like I said, it's Reel to Reel Fishing, and we'll get that trip lined up for you. So.
Yay.
Yeah, Scott's a great guy. He's one of our friends up here on the Chesapeake. Cool. I'm sure, man, that'll be an awesome day. If you guys do that, take pictures, because it'll be some great fishermen on one boat.
For sure.
I told you I got some things in the works, so you won't miss content if that's what I'm saying.
Well, Captain Dana, man, it's been a pleasure. We really look forward to fishing with you coming up here in April. But man, I thought you shared with me a wealth of knowledge that day on your boat, but you really pulled my punches tonight.
Yeah, really honored to have you on our show.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you guys. I'm humbled. So you guys you're doing the thing. So it's awesome. So.
We are putting in the good effort. We have Steve Fogel coming up next week before Lady C and I take a little fishing hiatus, and really, dig deep into what Florida has to offer us down here.
Yep.
And then we'll have a late special with Walleye Pete on April 28th.
Yes.
Scott says, I'm going to take the jigs and give the trip to the first person who likes this comment. I'm blessed enough to catch great fish all the time.
He does. He catches some amazing fish recently. Great photos.
Nice. Right on.
Yes.
Very generous. Very generous of you.
That's so kind.
Very generous of you, Scott, and everyone else that logged in tonight. Thank you so much. We had a great time, and we really appreciate everyone's support.
Yeah.
Check you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
You know I like Miss Clark. Yeah, she know he is my friend. Say if I just stay out the grave, he'll see that I don't go to the pen. Miss Clark is a lawyer, he could lie.